It's time for another AM4 gaming PC build, and we will squeeze this one in just below $600. Our PSU is the Corsair TX650M, a semi-modular PSU. We're using the Wraith Prism stock AMD cooler. We're using 16 gigabytes of Kingston HyperX DDR4 2666 MHz RAM. Our M.2 NVMe drive is a PCIe 4.0 Kingston with 500 gigabytes of storage. Our Wi-Fi card is the Asus PCIe AC88, and we've gone for the AMD Ryzen 5 2600X CPU. Our motherboard is the Gigabyte B550M DS3H, and this one is revision 1.3. And our GPU is the GeForce RTX 2060 6GB. This is actually the same GPU that I installed in the black and white build, but I've installed a RX 6600 XT in that one, and you can check out the video here. And for our cabinet, we're going for the Cooler Master TD300 Mesh Mini Tower. I find this one exciting because it has an RGB controller. First we take off these, because we're not going to need these brackets for the CPU cooler. So our CPU is the Ryzen 5 2600X. Triangle there goes to this corner where the triangle is. I like to wipe off the CPU with a little bit of alcohol after I've touched it with my fingers. Our M.2 NVMe disk, 500 gigabytes from Kingston. Yeah, 500 gigabytes is not a ton of memory or storage, but it'll get you by. And you know, if you're going to sell a budget PC, you need to cut down somewhere, and it's easy to mount more NVMe drives or even SATA drives in this build. Our Kingston HyperX DDR4 2666 and 16 gigabytes is still ample for budget gaming. We're mounting the RAM in these two gray slots here to ensure we get dual memory RAM. These AMD coolers, they can only be fixed one way because of the shape of the fixings here. So we're going to turn the shroud, because I like the AMD logo to be on top here, since it's a transparent case. One of the joys of building your own computer, you know, apart from being able to maintain it and stuff, is the fact that you can make it look good. So it's everyone's favorite moment. Just using a run-of-the-mill cooling paste here, and I'm following Adamant IT. So we're going with a cross pattern. So you can see there's no reason to bottom out these screws here, because it's the spring here that's giving the downward force. Just make sure that you get them in well into the brackets here. This looks like a really nice case. The RGB controller here, SATA power for it, front panel I/O fans, RGB, USB 3.0, and front panel audio. And this connects to the reset switch, so that's nice. Let's take off this. That's 220mm fans that is in with the build. I may end up putting one of them in the back. Tempered glass, nice. We can even take off the top of this. Makes it easier for us to work with. It's not like a cramped little torture chamber. Yeah, we got this ancient thing down here that we can just remove. I want the space for cables. So the Corsair TX650M, semi-modular PSU. Got the ATX, CPU cables, PCIe cables, and SATA power. The cabinet has a mesh filter underneath, so we're putting the intake fan down. So one of my mantras for building computers is that you should start thinking cable management from the get-go. Let's lead the ATX cable through here, Can be tucked in something like that. PCIe cable through that grommet there as well. CPU power goes up through here, and we will lead it something like this, I believe. So the I/O shield, and these are sometimes a little bit fiddly. It's supposed to click into place, like so. Dropping the motherboard in. So 8 screws. Like so. Right, let's start hooking up a little bit of things here. Start with the ATX cable. This can sometimes be a little bit hard. I like to use this CRC electronics cleaner. It's a little bit of lubrication, but I mean, don't take my word for it that it doesn't hurt the motherboard, but I mean, it's meant for electronics. So the CPU cable and the CPU fan. And you know what? I'm going to do the front panel audio and the other fiddly stuff before we do the GPU. I decided to move one of the fans back here. The side with the bracket on is the exhausting side. With these I always find it easier just to get some screws in there and then adjust the height of it later. And since it's an exhaust fan, I want it as high up as possible, because heat rises, right? And I'm bringing the fan cables through here. It's almost impossible to fit these connectors with you seeing what I'm actually doing. So the front panel audio is here. This is the USB 3.2, I think. This is the front panel AO without the reset switch. That's look at that later. And this is the fan header for the fans. I pulled the fan header and the RGB header back here, and this is where I hooked up the RGB, the 5-volt RGB. And then looking at the back here, I brought the fan header RGB back to the control panel here, and this is where the reset switch is connected. So that also controls the RGB here. So I've opened up the GPU, and the thermal paste here is quite dry, so we're going to change that. I don't have new thermal pads, so they will stay. Like, I believe this card has been used for mining before. I don't know, but there's this. It's almost like there's salt here or something. And then there's stuff here. I don't know what that gunk is, but we're going to clean that and I'll bring you back. I'm soaking the heatsink here in ethanol. I have no idea what that crust was on here, what that was. It looked like salt. Or perhaps someone spilled a battery onto this, or like a battery broke in some system this was in. I have no idea. So I don't know how much that helped. I wasn't able to get away a lot of this. I mean, a lot of this crust is still here, but oh well. I've never had problems with the thermals on the card before anyway. So. Magnetic screwdrivers, they're a must when working with small screws and small parts. A bead of new cooling paste. So the GPU is going in this PCIe 4 lane. I'm going to put the Wi-Fi card in this PCIe times 4 lane. Are you going to be difficult? Well, obviously you are. For those of you who are going to say that this would have been a lot easier before I mounted the motherboard, you are right. Instead of having to finagle under the GPU afterwards with this Wi-Fi card, we're doing it now. It's easier to get it in there. Now it's finally time for the GPU. You know, I kind of benchmarked, I won't say I benchmarked it, but I kind of compared it to the AMD RX 6600 XT, and it did very well in that comparison. You know, if you Think about that. You know, this GPU is from 2019 and the AMD one was from 2021. I mean, this little one blower, at least you don't have any problems with GPU sag with this one, you know. Usually I bring the cable up around to help prevent GPU sag, but this one is so small, so I've brought the PCIe power cable up this way now. Because I thought about bringing it from below here, but then, you know, upgrading the graphics card later would be a nightmare for anyone doing that. All we have to do is to hook up the ARGB to SATA power. So before we start cable tidying and stuff, let's see if this thing posts. And we have post. Now we'll do some cable tidying and I'll catch you on the flip side. So I'm fairly happy with this. It's not a work of art. This is a temporary disk. I'm just using it now to install Windows and stuff, so I'll leave it there, but it won't join the build. And again, I think it's fairly tight here. The red cable here is for the temporary drive, so ignore that. But yeah, I'm kind of happy with this. My capture card finally arrived, and here we are in Cyberpunk in 1080p high settings. This is a fantastic game and it runs great on this hardware. We are hovering just below 60 FPS depending on the area. You know, I've been playing computer games since the Commodore 64 and I find games enjoyable to play as long as you get a steady plus 30 FPS. And I play on my TV, which has a 30 Hz refresh rate. Let's push it to 1440 high settings, and again we are well within a steady 30 FPS. So I think this is how I would play on this PC. In Hogwarts in 1080 high we are getting a bit of screen tearing, but a real nice FPS. Turning VSync on caps the FPS at 30, but it's worth it with these settings in my opinion. In 1440 high the screen tearing is more pronounced. And the PC struggles a bit holding a steady 30 FPS with VSync here, so for me it's a toss-up between living with the screen tearing or going for VSync for 1440p. In Palworld we cranked 1080p up to epic, and the game runs great. A bit lower FPS inside my starter base here than when I'm out hunting pals. And in 1440 high we are getting mid 40s in the base and about the same while we're out hunting. Starfield. And here we are in New Atlantis in 1080p high. There's a little bit of screen tearing, and turning on VSync at 37 FPS to get rid of it does not seem like much of a sacrifice to me. I think the game runs great like this. Now if you want more graphical fidelity, this build runs Starfield at 1440p medium really well. But But that is it for this one, guys. How did you like the build? Is there anything you would have done differently? And did you like the game benchmarks at the end? Let me know in the comments below. And if you are not subscribed to the channel, remember to do so as well and hit that like button. If you enjoyed this video, here's another one where I upgraded my black and white living room PC from the RTX 2060 to the RX 6600 XT. If you want to know what I thought about that upgrade, feel free to check out that video. Cheers guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.